that is really important when we talk about companies that are migrating to the cloud and or they have a series of disparate data centers with series of heterogeneous and disparate systems that are all hodgepodge together through integration. And how do we prevent data breaches? So from an enterprise level, in your processes, you should be able to note from an information side that you note on your business process, do we have a database firewall that specifically addresses SQL injection attacks? And that this also addresses cybersecurity. So I thought that was very pertinent. And then this is the unified modeling language along with BPMN and EPC that I developed for Carnegie Mellon. Again, all this was not meant to inundate you guys. I wanted to give you information to show you by example instead of a bunch of academic information. This is where I will place the weekly recordings and additional meetings that we may have. I said this last week during our first session. I want to be part of every team. So Ben, like your team and your team members, consider me to be a silent team member. I want to be actively involved. So as you guys are working on Project 1 together, Project 2 and Project 3, which I encourage you to keep the same teams together, to me it makes it makes for a level of sound coherence. I want you to schedule meetings with me if you want to. I want you to send me notes. I want you to ping me by phone. I want to be an active, silent member of each of the teams, not necessarily to do the work for you, but to add my input and guidance and to help you guys. So are there any objections with what I just stated? That is what is meant by additional meetings, so I could chart them and put a summary of notes per every meeting with every project team. Are there any questions? Is it a good idea, bad idea? Okay. Thank you. And then, of course, the weekly recordings, because in this new system, Canvas, they use a third-party service for the recordings, and it's only good for 14 days. So when this session concludes, I will do a copy of it, save it, so we have a permanent copy of it. And it will also be placed in this directory here.
Are we assigned to the teams, or are we self-organizing?
No. It is left up to class, the class members to formulate their own teams. The reason why I did that, like last semester in the spring when I taught this, we had several people who were from the same organization, like Nationwide Insurance. So they were able to take actual projects that they were working on for Nationwide. And they were actually able to really get a lot of value. So I didn't know who was from what organization, if they were from the same organization. So I left it up to the class members to basically reach out to one another, formulate your teams. I've basically you could have up to 4 members, not 3 members. I did increase it. And you could basically create your own project team. So that's why I left it up to the class members. You think it's a good idea, or for those class members that have informed teams, would you like me to basically place them into designated teams? Or
I think that may be a good idea.
Okay. 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 I will do that, and I will send that information out this evening. Okay. I will post an announcement that these are the teams that are formed. And I know that a couple people have reached out to me. They already formed their teams, so I know who's on that team. So I would not include them, okay? But that's the rationale why I did that. And last week, I believe I made a point of that. Um, so I will definitely do that this evening. That's a very good point. What?
One thing I noticed about last week is I couldn't find the recording till last week.
Okay. The recording, yours truly, your professor made a mistake and did not mark the checkbox. So it was my fault.
Okay. Want to make sure I wasn't missing it.
No. As I was getting used to this system, it's easier to use than Angel and Blackboard, but sometimes when it's so simplistic, you kind of overlook it without making excuses. But this one is definitely being recorded, and I will spin off a copy so we can have it, and I'll place it in that folder. But thank you for bringing it up as well. Let me make sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, one more clarification.
Sure.
My Flash has crashed a couple of times. But you said you were going to finish assigning people to teams?
Yes. Because I already know there's one team that already has like 4 active members. I received an email from her. I'm bad with names. No, I don't see her. I don't see her in this meeting. But I do have her email. So I know who she has on that team. And if the email's not too explicit, I will reach out to her. But I will do that by this evening. I will I will post an announcement, and under the announcement, you could see the teams, and I will actually create the project teams with the members. Is that okay?
That's fine with me, yeah.
Okay. Now, the reason why I say use me as an active silent partner on your team, because even though I've read all the bios of everyone, there's certain strengths sometimes that are not easily brought out. Like, for instance, I tend to be a very detailed engineer, and sometimes I will miss the big picture. So it's good to have people that have global, linear, and they're detailed. And so that's another reason why I would like to be a silent partner. So if you don't have someone who is basically very detailed oriented, I could fill that void. So let me make a point about grading. Okay. Even though there's assigned dates when assignments are to be handed in, uploaded, etc. If you have some difficulty, please let me know. For instance, say you're traveling and you can't get to the assignment, and of course, we have families and so on, and sometimes it's hard. I know from experience. That's okay. I will not take off any points if the assignment came in later, say a week later. If there was any critical emergencies, I would give you ample time beyond a week as well. So I'm willing to work with everyone on their assignments as well. Is that agreeable with everyone?
I think that's
that works for me.
Okay. Okay. Because I know many years ago I was at graduate school, so I was on the other side of the aisle. And to me, you need to give that flexibility because the end game is that I learn through application, that I walk away with value without sounding like I'm preaching. So another point about grading. If you are, for instance, say you have an 88. If I was to average all the individual assignments and your contributions to the project, which there is a peer evaluation that everyone must do within the project, and say you're pulling an 88 on average, but you're consistent. In other words, you're not like the stock market in 2008 where you're all over the map. Instead of a B or B plus, I believe you deserve an A because it's consistency of application. So, but if you're not consistent, but you have an overall average of 88, I would still have to consider either a B plus or B. So is that also agreeable with everyone with my approach to grading, how I view it, how I treat assignments and so on?
Yep.
Okay. So before we get to the projects, so Module A, the foundations of enterprise architecture modeling. Let me make a key point. Let me just go to announcements. Just want to take a step back. Did everyone, with the welcome announcement, did everyone go to this link here?
Yes,
Yeah, there was a link to the announcement to look at the 3 E's enterprise architecture framework. Reason why I'm going to this is because in the spring when I taught EA 873, I kept emphasizing, by the way, enterprise architecture is in fact an aggregate of 3 key enterprise architecture viewpoints. Well, what are they? Business process architecture, information systems architecture, and information technology architecture. Business being the most critical. So in this model here, if I have a business process, and I'm talking overall my business processes, the whole QMS that refers to my set of processes. If every process, in this case, let's pick on one for logistics. If it's effective, meaning that it aligns to my business strategies based upon my basis of competition in the marketplace, then I am capable or effective in the market, right? I'm not just executing a well-defined process and I'm not making money, I'm losing money. So this is what I mean by effectiveness. It starts out with a well-defined process or set of processes that align to the business model, the business strategies. So assuming that I have that, then you go to information systems. I'll pick on the standard example of ERP, like an SAP, a PeopleSoft, a JD Edwards, etc. That is a form of an information system. So if I have if my processes are effective across my enterprise for purchasing, cost accounting, manufacturing, CRM, SEM, you name them, then it's very easy for me to take something like SAP or PeopleSoft, or say just even Oracle Financials, and to basically take the business rules that I've defined and the specific policy requirements and use them in the context of defining those business rules to meet those policy requirements per area, logistics, SCM, CRM, whatever, okay? So if I'm able to do that, then I have what? Efficiency. Think of it like automation. So I could increase my output based upon the fact that now I have information systems that could do my thinking, that could number crunch for me, that could basically expedite customer shipment orders, etc. But all that is predicated upon me having a process on paper per se. So if it's effective and it meets my business strategies, then it's very easy to bring in something like an SAP or just say Oracle Financials and basically use the information system to give you those greater levels of output, hence automation, hence efficiency. If we go to the information technology, the only thing that information technology provides or gives you is the enablement. So in other words, any information system, say like Oracle Financials, well, the information technology that is used for this information system is everything that the business user or information systems analyst doesn't see. What's that? The operating system, the network. Is it commodity hardware, standalone servers, or are we using engineered systems? What about the relational database management system? What about the application code? Do we have embedded software systems? What about security, et cetera, et cetera? So everything that is needed to enable this information system, so this information system can provide a level of automation, greater efficiencies for greater output, is all predicated upon a well-defined set of business processes. So if I move down here, business process architecture drives information systems architecture and information technology architecture. So your entire enterprise architecture also governs business process. The reason why I have it looking like this, because some students were under the impression that business process architecture was separate unto itself, and it's not. So the reason why I took you to this was just to let me see. Yeah, the reason why I took you to this was that then you guys could have a context, and this all came out of teaching EA 873 in the spring semester. So this framework has been adopted by Carnegie Mellon, where I'm a senior fellow, and it's been adopted as an industry standard now. But that's the only reason why I had appended it to the welcome, so I could set the context. Not to say you guys did not know or understand business process architecture, but I wanted to set the context. Are there any questions about that? Okay. Is it good information? Bad information? Okay. So let's go
I'd
back.
say it's good. I would have to confess that I did miss the link, and so I'll have to make a note to go back and read through it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's, it's frameworks are nothing more than, like if you look at Xactman, TOGAF, DODAF, all the alphabets, frameworks are essential, but they're nothing but guidelines. In other words, there's never been an organization that I ever worked for as a consultant from IBM or Oracle, or any organization I worked for directly, that ended up say, well, let me take TOGAF off the shelf and let me call it my enterprise architecture that governs my business, information systems, and information technology. That's not the case. What happens is, and this is based on my experience, is that these frameworks, that in most cases, multiple frameworks are used as references for best practices, guidelines, etc. And at the end of it, every customer comes up with a hybrid from these multiple frameworks, but the core of their framework for their organization is predicated upon their business strategies, their business model, their requirements, goals, objectives, and so on. So that's been from my experience. And so what this framework does is it gets people thinking in the right direction. So they need to marry this up, align this up, and benchmark it against who they are as an organization, what's their basis of competition in the marketplace, where do they want to be 5 years, 10 years from now, and what are the core competencies they will need, and of course the core capabilities if we speak of infrastructure, hence the information technologies that need to be brought in to support these new information systems. So that's why it's in the same vein like with this, like with the CMMI. I'm one of the principal authors of that. Back in 2000, I got Lockheed Martin. They achieved a level 5, and I was one of the principal writers to the solution engineering process areas, as well as quantitative measures and project management. But again, they're just guidelines. So let me get back on course. So Module A, the foundations of enterprise architecture modeling. In this case, we're focusing on the business process architecture. But again, you will learn BPO and so on, and we will tie in some UML, even though those two aren't prerequisites. B, enterprise modeling standards, languages, and frameworks. That's another reason why I posted that I showed you guys under systems architectural design principles and techniques. If you look at this guy here, and again, everyone, thank you for your time. So here we have all the frameworks. Technical, most of these frameworks are business oriented. So it gets into a breakdown. And in this case, the business process languages that we're modeling to are EPC and BPMN, but we will bring BPO in there as well, even though BPO is not part of Project 3 for automated workflow. And then enterprise modeling architectures and approaches. That's why there's another document up in that same area where it talks about system views and relationships. Data modeling, I have a document up there from Carnegie Mellon on data architecture and keep in mind with data architecture, they have big data. I'm sure everyone has heard of big data. It's a buzzword. It's mammoth when you talk about tying in different types of content: static, dynamic, relational data, unstructured data, information, multimedia, and how do you relate them based upon similar business rules, and how do you build the computational clusters that you could separate like content into them. So I will mention here I will mention, if anybody wants to see some examples, natural language processing using Python scripting. Basically, I'm sure everyone has seen the movies, The Terminator, where they use the expression, the machines have become self-aware. Watson from IBM, the analytics, robotics, self-aware. So by developing scripts to communicate with analytical data through natural language processing, the analytics itself is taking on a self-awareness. It's learning from me, a human, based upon my behavior, based upon what I may ask as a follow-up question. So those are called patterns of behavior. In the same way, if I wanted to prevent SQL injection attacks at the data tier, I would use, say, a database firewall specifically to detect and net SQL injection attacks that are masked either as a SOAP UI or composite web app, etc. And from that, the firewall is learning, and it's creating its own patterns of possible types of behavior that may occur relative to the types of SQL injection attacks. So I did not mean to get off on a tangent, but does that sound interesting?
Spooky.
Yeah. Oh, you should be me, sitting in a lab and talking to a machine, Watson. So I will pull some examples of analytics where you're deploying natural language processing. The reason why I'm bringing this up in association with enterprise architecture, but particularly business process architecture, because your business process models will become self-aware based upon the underlying information technologies that they're utilizing, and will then attempt to learn from changes in its data, changes or interactions with applications and or other systems, or human interaction, where in fact, when you come in today and you're looking at your cost accounting, say purchase price variance process models, you may say, wait a minute, here I have an extension of how I'm going to do purchase price variance. I see current costs being involved. Well, wait a minute, my whole process has changed maybe 25% of the time. Well, what happened? That's because it's learning from you and other interactions. So that's why I bring it up. So then enterprise modeling tools and strategies. When we began this call, I brought up the House HOBE, the House of Business Engineering, which is the framework that Aris has for business process architecture. And then the tools and so on. Keep in mind, if you go from Aris, which is an industry standard tool, it's one of the original creators. As I said, Dr. Scheer with EPC, Event Process Chain. When you go from Aris, say to Oracle's BPA tool, or you go to Rational by IBM with System Architect and so on, These modeling tools for business process development, either in BPMN or EPC or even BPO, etc., they adhere to standards. In other words, you find probably 0.1% any deviation, and a deviation is not in the standard notation, symbology, constructs, etc. It's in the navigation. It may be in the terminology, like with EPC, they say there must be an event, then an activity. In BPMN, they say there must be a state and then an activity. So a state is exactly like an event. And then there's, besides the services-oriented architecture, which is business process centric, specifically for integration. There's the event-driven architecture that's also business-centric, that you develop those models in business process modeling notation. So then Module E, analyzing and managing enterprise models. That's basically what we're talking about, is the ability to take these models. So if you're looking at a set of business process models across a set of business functions, or maybe within the same business function, tools like ARIS and Rational and Oracle's Business Process Architect will help you do some high-level analysis, to do some comparisons of what? Like functionality. So hence, is there duplication? Is there too much points of integration, business integration between these processes? So it will help you with the analysis piece, but there has never been a tool, in my opinion, and I've been in this game for 40 years, where it's a complete substitute for the human brain. And I'm not being satirical. So these tools are helping you. And so, of course, when we say managing enterprise models, well, how do we manage them? Not just audit the fact that I have this structure set of models across business functions, and within each business function that makes up my quality management system that I audit for correct versions and application and so on, but also I assess their relevancy to how I conduct certain business tasks based upon my business strategies. So therefore, the business models are constantly aligned. This is how I call innovation. So innovation is part of managing. And then we get to the, one point, project management. Project management, when we get in like to governance, regulation, compliance, for instance, with SOX. Well, you could have a set of models that comply to the Sarbanes-Oxley law, that was instituted over 14 years ago. It was Enron. So basically every month, the CEO, CIO, CTO, CFO, I guess there's a certain clip that the company, certain dollar value, and if they're publicly traded, that every month they must sign each general ledger, the profit and loss sheet rather, to ensure that there was no deviance, skewing the truth, etc. with these numbers. So there are software systems. What?
Or plausible deniability.
Yes. And when I do work I do some side consulting, also for Wright-Patt Air Force Base myself and for the DoD. With GRC, they take this very, very seriously. So in implementing systems to do this, information systems, which is the easy part, the hard part is trying to get these people to sit down and define what are the rules for governance. How are we going to assess? How are we going to ensure through audit compliance. They must be documented into well-defined processes. So that's the hardest part. The information systems and technology, that's easy. So that's it in terms of all the modules. I went over again the resources that I added. I pointed out the key ones. For those that joined us late, this one here, synopsis based on assigned readings per topic. Every topic, I put together a PowerPoint and or added additional material that talks to the key points of what you've been required to read and to analyze, but also I added, where necessary, applicable and pertinent information. And in some cases, with some of these readings are at a high level, like for Gartner, well, there needs to be some detail, some context behind it. So please leverage these summaries. So if I go down to the projects, there's been one correction to the project. In each of the projects, when you open them up, you saw that they were worth 250 points. They are worth 100 points. So that change was made within the text. Like when you called up business architecture modeling and you read through the text and you saw 250 points. It is 100 points, and I do apologize for that. But nonetheless, the projects are key. The projects are key in terms of the majority of the weighting factor for grading. Before we get into the projects, I added, let me click here. And again, everyone, thank you. I added, let me kind of go up here. When we get into ARIS, which I will show you guys, ARIS had put this together, which if you're putting together org charts, it breaks apart the notation, the syntax, symbology. We won't be doing any data modeling, but still it's important, particularly if you're introducing a set of relational data that supports a business requirement in your policy that will be used in a series of one or more business processes. The IT infrastructure. Remember I said I'm linking, for instance, SAP's supplier chain management mod to your SCM processes. So therefore, if I'm a business user and I need to engage a system or to link to a system because I'm basically kicking off a orchestrated workflow, but the user doesn't understand it's a workflow with integration, they just know that they need to update the data, and here's the SCM system. So this provides all the notation, symbology, syntax. The system landscape, what this refers to is if you were putting together, say, a high-level process set that would govern a set of business processes for all the areas you're manufacturing, that would be high level. You could also use this specific to your IT systems. So go back to the example where you have SAP, which is an ERP system. It's like a battleship. There's, in many cases, if I was just looking at logistics, logistics has several submodules, and in each of these submodules, there's sub-submodules, and in some cases, I go down to 14 or 15 lower levels. And so, if I go back here, business process, here we're using the EPC, event process chain, and it tells you that this symbol is an activity, which used to be called a function. If this was BPMN, again, this would be a state activity. They use function in BPMN rather. And you see basically process, customer buy a new book, open online shop. Okay, so event, activity, leads to another activity, leads to another activity, add book to shopping cart, update purchase order, select payment, send order confirmation, send book, reorder system. So these two represent, of course, Boolean logic, if then else, and or. So I thought this was good information to add to get you guys started. So let me go back to mods. And the first thing I'm going to do is okay. First thing I'm going to do is connect through remote desktop. Okay. Oh. Okay.
Did you drop off a VPN?
Yeah, I need to get back on VPN. Yeah, so let me show you with VPN. Thank you because I forget that sometimes. So let me go to VPN VPN model server.
So per one of your notes as well, we can run this local, right?
Well, yeah, I had put together a set of documentation print screens showing that you could download Cisco AnyConnect, and here's the strings and so on. So let me connect and get back on to VLabs and Access Eris, and then I will go back to Canvas and I will resurrect those instructions, okay? So in this case, here we come up with this. Oh, well, let me disconnect. Let me reconnect again. Connect. Okay, and that's the proper string. Username.